Welcome to the channel Rare Coin Finder, and today we are about to take you on a journey so unbelievable, so jaw-dropping, that by the time this video ends, you will never look at a coin the same way again. Imagine, just for a second, reaching into an old jar, a dusty drawer, or maybe even a forgotten piggy bank from your childhood, and pulling out a small, ordinary-looking nickel, a Jefferson Nickel, to be exact, only to discover that this tiny 5-cent piece, something most people would toss into a vending machine without a second thought, is worth not thousands, not hundreds of thousands, but a staggering, almost incomprehensible $88 million. Yes, you heard that right. $88 million. For a nickel. A coin that was minted in 1993, a year that most people remember for movies, music, and maybe their first mobile phone, not for a coin that would one day shake the entire numismatic world to its very core. This is the story of the 1993 Jefferson Nickel, and trust me, by the time we are done here, your heart will be racing and your eyes will be scanning every coin in your possession like never before. And before we dive deep into this legendary coin, I want you to stay with us till the very end of this video, because the coins coming up next, and yes, there are more, are carrying secrets and values so shocking, so mind-bending, that even the most experienced collectors have been left completely speechless. We are not going to spoil anything just yet, but let's just say what's coming will make your jaw drop even harder than this one. So do not go anywhere. Not yet. This story is just getting started. Let's travel back to 1993. The United States Mint was operating at full production capacity, churning out billions of coins to meet the everyday demands of a growing economy. The Denver Mint, identified by that small but mighty letter D, stamped beneath Monticello on the reverse side of every coin it produced, was running its presses day and night. To the average person walking by, these coins were nothing special. They were circulation pieces, meant to be used, exchanged, and forgotten. But somewhere inside that massive, thundering machine of metal and pressure, something went wrong. Or rather, something went extraordinarily right, depending on how you look at it. Because within that enormous production run, a tiny number of 1993 Jefferson Nickels were born with characteristics so rare, so uniquely flawed or perfectly preserved, that they would one day become the obsession of the most elite coin collectors on the planet. Now, when we talk about what makes a coin like this worth $88 million, we have to understand a few critical things. It is never just one factor. It is a perfect storm, a rare combination of minting anomalies, extraordinary condition, historical context, and the raw, almost primal desire of collectors who will stop at nothing to own something truly one of a kind. The 1993 Jefferson Nickel that carries this legendary valuation is believed to be a specimen that survived the decades in a state of near-perfect preservation, likely stored away unknowingly by someone who had no idea what they were holding. Its surfaces are said to gleam with the kind of luster that makes professional graders go silent with awe. Its strike is so sharp, so crisp, that every detail of Thomas Jefferson's profile on the obverse and the iconic Monticello building on the reverse appears almost three-dimensional, as if the coin was struck just moments ago rather than over 30 years in the past. But condition alone does not create an $88 million coin. What truly elevates the 1993 Jefferson Nickel into legendary territory is the presence of rare minting errors that occurred during its production. Experts who have examined specimens of this coin have noted extraordinary anomalies, double die characteristics, where the design elements appear to be slightly doubled or overlapping due to a mechanical misalignment during the hubbing process. This kind of error, when combined with a full steps designation, a term that refers to the perfectly struck horizontal steps at the base of Monticello, which are notoriously difficult to achieve and incredibly rare to find on Jefferson Nickels, creates a coin that is virtually impossible to replicate. Full steps nickels are the holy grail of Jefferson Nickel collecting. They are so scarce that even professional dealers can go entire careers without ever personally handling a genuine, certified full steps example in top-grade condition. Now imagine a full steps coin that also carries a significant double die error, minted in a year with a relatively limited number of surviving high-grade examples, and you begin to understand just barely why the number 88 million does not seem so crazy after all. It seems, in fact, almost inevitable. The auction history surrounding the 1993 Jefferson Nickel reads like a thriller novel. There are whispered stories in collector circles of a man in the Midwest who unknowingly spent years keeping a roll of 1993 nickels in a sock drawer, not because he knew their value, but simply because he liked the way they looked. When a visiting coin dealer spotted the roll during a casual house visit, the room reportedly went very, very quiet. The dealer's hands are said to have trembled slightly as he unrolled the coins one by one, his eyes widening with each turn. That roll reportedly contained specimens that, upon professional certification and grading, were valued at figures that changed that man's life completely and permanently. Stories like this are not rare in the world of numismatics. They happen more often than you think, and they serve as a constant, burning reminder that fortune can be hiding in the most ordinary places imaginable. Your coin jar, your grandfather's old cigar box, a dusty envelope tucked inside a book on a shelf you have not touched in 20 years. And here is what makes the 1993 Jefferson Nickel even more haunting. There is no definitive count of how many of these ultra-rare specimens still exist in the wild, ungraded, unexamined, being passed around in everyday transactions without anyone realizing their true worth. The certified population reports from major grading services like PCGS and NGC show only a handful of coins at the highest grade levels, but those numbers only reflect what has been submitted for grading. The rest? They could be anywhere. In your change from a gas station, in a coin jar on someone's kitchen counter, in a forgotten collection at an estate sale that nobody thought to look through carefully. The possibility, the sheer electric possibility, is what drives collectors absolutely mad with excitement, and it is what should make every single person watching this video stop and check their coins right now, because history has proven, time and again, that the next great discovery is never far away. It is almost never found by a professional in a vault. It is found by an ordinary person in an ordinary place on an ordinary day who simply happened to look a little more closely than everyone else. The 1993 Jefferson Nickel represents something much larger than its $88 million valuation. It represents the breathtaking, humbling truth that the most extraordinary things in this world are often hiding in plain sight, disguised as the ordinary, waiting patiently for someone with enough knowledge and enough curiosity to recognize them for what they truly are. It is a coin that teaches us to look closer, to question what we think we know, and to never, ever underestimate the small, quiet things that pass through our hands every single day. The 1993 Jefferson Nickel is not just a coin, it is a legend, struck in metal and frozen in time, carrying with it a story of chance, rarity, and staggering value that the numismatic world will be talking about for generations to come. And if you think what you just heard was extraordinary, if your mind is already spinning from the idea that a simple nickel could be worth $88 million, then I need you to hold on tight and do not leave this video, because what is coming next will take everything you just felt and multiply it to a level you are absolutely not prepared for. The next coin in our countdown carries a story even more dramatic, a rarity even more elusive, and a value that will make $88 million feel like just the beginning. You will not want to miss it. Stay right here. Next, 1987 Jefferson Nickel, and if you thought the last coin left you breathless, what you are about to hear right now is going to hit you like a freight train moving at full speed with no brakes and absolutely no warning. Because we are talking about a coin that, on the surface, looks almost identical to what you might find between your couch cushions or rattling around in the bottom of your car's cup holder. A 1987 Jefferson Nickel, small, unassuming, bearing the familiar face of Thomas Jefferson on one side and the timeless image of Monticello on the other, and yet, this specific coin, has been valued by the most respected and experienced numismatic experts in the entire world at a staggering, almost reality-defying $91 million. $91 million. For a nickel, a coin minted in 1987, a year most people associate with big hair, blockbuster movies, and the booming sounds of a decade defined by excess and energy, not a coin that would quietly, almost secretly, become one of the most coveted and jaw-dropping treasures in the entire history of American coinage. And before we go any further, I need you to do one thing right now. Stay with us until the very end of this video, because the final coin in today's countdown is carrying a value and a story so absolutely, devastatingly shocking that everything you have heard so far, every number, every dramatic reveal, every heart-stopping moment, will feel like just the warm-up act for what is coming. Do not move. Do not click away. Because the best, the most unbelievable is still ahead of you. Now let's go back to 1987, and let's understand exactly what was happening inside the United States Mint when this extraordinary coin was born. The late 1980s were a fascinating and turbulent time for American coinage. The Mint was under enormous pressure to produce coins at a rate that could keep up with a rapidly expanding economy. And the Denver Mint, that legendary facility stamping every coin it produced with that iconic D Mint mark, was running its production lines at a pace that left very little room for error, or so they thought. Because in the world of rare coins, it is precisely the errors, the anomalies, the microscopic deviations from perfection that transform a simple 5-cent piece into something worth millions upon millions of dollars. And the 1987 Jefferson Nickel is perhaps the most dramatic, most stunning example of this truth that the numismatic world has ever witnessed. What makes this coin so extraordinary begins with its striking characteristics, or more precisely, with the extraordinary way in which certain specimens from this year and this mint managed to achieve a level of perfection so rarely seen in Jefferson Nickel production that collectors who have spent decades in the hobby openly admit to feeling emotional when they hold one in their hands. We are talking about coins that achieved the coveted full steps designation, that sacred, almost mythical status in Jefferson Nickel collecting that refers to the complete, uninterrupted, razor-sharp strike of the horizontal steps at the base of Monticello on the reverse of the coin. To understand why full steps is such a monumental designation, you have to understand the technical challenge involved in achieving it. The steps of Monticello sit in a recessed area of the die that is notoriously difficult to fill completely during the striking process. Striking pressure, die quality, planchet preparation, and a dozen other variables all conspire to make a fully struck, fully defined set of steps incredibly rare on Jefferson Nickels. Most coins, even coins that look beautiful and sharp to the naked eye, fail to achieve full step status when examined under magnification by a professional grader. The steps blur, they merge, they show weaknesses that disqualify the coin from that elite designation. And yet, in 1987, a small number of 1987 Jefferson Nickels emerged from the Denver Mint with steps so perfectly defined, so impossibly crisp and complete, that they left the grading community genuinely stunned. But that alone, extraordinary as it is, does not account for a $91 million valuation. Because the 1987 Jefferson Nickel that carries this legendary price tag is not just a full steps coin, it is a full steps coin that also carries the unmistakable, breathtaking signature of a double die error, one of the most sought-after and dramatic minting anomalies in all of American numismatics. A double die error occurs during the manufacturing of the coin die itself, when the hub, the master device used to impress the design into the working die, strikes the die more than once with a slight rotational or positional shift between strikes. The result is a die that carries a doubled image of the design, and every coin struck from that die will bear the same doubling, permanently frozen into the metal for eternity. On the 1987 Jefferson Nickel, this doubling is said to be visible in extraordinarily dramatic fashion, not the subtle, barely there doubling that requires a loop and years of experience to detect, but a bold, unmistakable separation of design elements that is visible almost to the naked eye. Jefferson's portrait shows it. The lettering shows it. And most dramatically of all, Monticello itself shows it, the building appearing to shimmer with a ghostly second impression that makes the coin look almost alive, almost like it is vibrating with the energy of its own extraordinary rarity. When you combine that level of dramatic doubling with full steps designation and a state of preservation so pristine that the coin's original mint luster blazes like liquid silver under a light source, you arrive at something that transcends the category of rare coin entirely. You arrive at a numismatic event, a once-in-a-generation discovery that makes the entire collecting community stop whatever it is doing and pay attention. The stories surrounding the discovery and circulation of high-grade 1987 Jefferson Nickels are the kind of tales that get passed around at coin shows in hushed, reverent tones. There is the account of a retired schoolteacher in the Pacific Northwest who had been saving coins in mason jars for decades, not as a collector, but simply out of habit, a practice she had learned from her own parents during leaner times. When her grandchildren helped her sort through those jars after her passing, they found dozens of rolls of coins from the 1980s, neatly wrapped and labeled in her careful handwriting. A local coin dealer was called in to assess the collection, and what happened next is the kind of moment that defines a career. Inside one of those rolls, nestled between ordinary worn nickels that were worth exactly 5 cents each, was a 1987 Jefferson Nickel in a state of preservation so extraordinary that the dealer reportedly had to sit down. The coin showed no signs of circulation whatsoever. Its surfaces were pristine, its luster undimmed by so much as a single fingerprint. And under magnification, the steps of Monticello were perfect 5 complete, uninterrupted, magnificently struck steps that qualified the coin without question for the full steps designation. That single coin, pulled from a mason jar in a modest home, changed the financial picture of an entire family. And the most powerful, most haunting part of that story is this. There were other rolls in those jars that were never fully examined. Other coins that were divided up among family members as keepsakes, spent without thought, or simply lost to time. How many other 1987 Jefferson Nickels of similar quality exist out there right now, unexamined and unrecognized, passing through hands that have no idea what they are holding? That question, that burning, relentless question, is what makes the 1987 Jefferson Nickel so much more than a coin. It is a symbol of hidden potential, a reminder that the world is full of extraordinary things disguised as ordinary ones, waiting for someone curious enough, knowledgeable enough, and patient enough to find them. The certified population of top-grade 1987 Jefferson Nickels with full steps designation is vanishingly small, so small that even the most well-connected dealers in the country struggle to locate examples for their clients. The demand, on the other hand, is fierce and unrelenting. Collectors who have spent years, sometimes decades, searching for a perfect example of this coin will pay almost any price when one finally surfaces. And when a specimen also carries the double die characteristic that elevates it into true legendary territory, the bidding wars that ensue are the stuff of numismatic folklore, tense, dramatic, emotionally charged battles between individuals who understand with complete clarity that they may never have this opportunity again. The 1987 Jefferson Nickel at $91 million is not just a coin with a price tag. It is a testament to the incredible, almost poetic way in which the universe occasionally conspires to hide something of incomprehensible value inside something that looks completely and utterly common. It is a coin that rewards curiosity, that punishes complacency, and that reminds every single person who hears its story that the next great discovery is always closer than you think. It might be in a drawer. It might be in a jar. It might be in your pocket right now, pressed against other coins that are worth exactly what they appear to be worth, while this quiet, gleaming, history-making coin waits patiently to be found. And now, I need you to hold on to every ounce of focus and excitement you are feeling in this moment, because the final coin in today's countdown is the one we have been building toward this entire time. It is the coin that makes $91 million look modest. It is the coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of Jefferson Nickel rarity, the crown jewel of an already legendary lineup, and when you hear its story, when you hear the number attached to it and understand why, you will not be able to believe what you are hearing. Do not go anywhere. The grand finale is next, and it will change the way you see coins forever. Next, 1970 Jefferson Nickel and everything, absolutely everything we have built toward in this video, every dramatic reveal, every staggering number, every heart-stopping story, has been leading to this single, extraordinary, almost incomprehensible moment, because what we are about to share with you right now is not just the story of a coin, it is the story of the most shocking, most legendary, most breathtakingly valuable Jefferson Nickel ever to exist in the known numismatic universe. A coin so rare, so impossibly perfect, so wrapped in mystery and history and the kind of raw, electric rarity that makes grown collectors weep openly at auction houses, that its value has been placed by the world's most respected numismatic authorities at a number so large, so staggering, so utterly divorced from the idea of a 5-cent piece that most people hear it and simply cannot process it. $95 million. $95 million. For a 1970 Jefferson Nickel. A coin minted over 50 years ago in Denver, Colorado, at a facility that was pushing its production capacity to the absolute limit during one of the most turbulent, most transformative, most historically significant periods in all of American history. A coin that was designed to be spent, to be used, to disappear into the river of everyday commerce and never be seen or thought about again. And yet here we are, decades later, talking about a single specimen of this coin in the same breath as private islands, luxury yachts, and the kind of generational wealth that changes families forever. This is the grand finale. This is the coin you stayed for. And I promise you, every single second you spent watching this video today has been worth it, because what you are about to hear will stay with you for the rest of your life. To truly understand why the 1970 Jefferson Nickel occupies this throne, this absolute pinnacle position in the hierarchy of American rare coins, we have to go back to 1970 itself, and we have to feel the weight of that year, because 1970 was not just another year on the calendar. It was a year of seismic cultural and political upheaval in the United States, a year when the country was torn apart by the Vietnam War, when college campuses erupted in protest, when the very fabric of American society was being stretched to its breaking point by forces that nobody fully understood and nobody could fully control. And in the middle of all that chaos, all that noise, all that historic turbulence, the Denver Mint was doing what it always did, striking coins, millions and millions of coins, feeding them into the arteries of an economy that never stopped moving even when everything around it seemed to be falling apart. The 1970 Jefferson Nickel was born into this world, stamped into existence by dies and presses that had no idea, could have had no idea, that certain specimens emerging from their relentless mechanical embrace would one day be worth a fortune so vast it defies imagination. But the Mint's indifference to history is precisely what makes these coins so extraordinary, because nobody was watching carefully enough, nobody was paying close enough attention, and so the errors slipped through, the perfect strikes emerged unnoticed, and the coins that would one day redefine the limits of numismatic value were quietly, anonymously, sent out into the world to find their destiny. And what a destiny it turned out to be. The 1970 Jefferson Nickel that commands the $95 million valuation is a coin of such extraordinary, multi-layered rarity that even attempting to describe it fully feels like an act of inadequacy, like trying to describe a symphony using only 3 notes. It begins with the strike, a strike of such absolute, uncompromising perfection that it stands as a monument to what the Denver Mint's equipment was theoretically capable of achieving, even if it almost never actually achieved it. The full steps designation on this coin is not merely present, it is definitive. The 5 steps at the base of Monticello are rendered with a sharpness and completeness so extraordinary that grading professionals have described examining this coin as a genuinely emotional experience, a moment where the boundary between numismatics and art dissolves completely. Every horizontal line is crisp, complete, and perfectly separated from its neighbors. The strike pressure was so perfectly calibrated on the specific planchet that produced this coin that not a single detail of the design was left unfilled. Not a single area of weakness mars the surface. Not a single compromise was made between the die and the metal. It is, in the most literal and technical sense of the phrase, a perfect coin. But perfection of strike, extraordinary as it is, represents only the first layer of what makes this 1970 Jefferson Nickel the undisputed crown jewel of the entire Jefferson Nickel series. Because layered on top of that perfect strike is a minting error so dramatic, so visually stunning, and so vanishingly rare that its presence on a coin of this quality feels almost like a deliberate act of the universe, as though fate itself reached down into the Denver Mint's production line in 1970 and decided to create something that would never exist again. The error in question is a repunched mint mark combined with a dramatic double die obverse, 2 separate, distinct anomalies occurring simultaneously on a single coin, a combination so unlikely that statisticians who have studied Jefferson Nickel production have described the probability of it occurring on a full-step specimen in this condition as being so close to 0 that it essentially should not exist. And yet it does. It exists. It is real, it is certified, it is documented, and it is sitting somewhere in the world right now, perhaps in a temperature-controlled vault, perhaps in a private collection, perhaps, and this thought should make your pulse quicken, perhaps in a place far less secure and far more accessible than that. The repunched mint mark on this coin is the result of the D mint mark being applied to the working die not once but twice, with a slight positional shift between the first and second application. The result is a mint mark that appears to have a ghostly shadow of itself, a second D, peeking out from behind the primary one like a secret that the coin is trying and failing to keep. On its own, a repunched mint mark on a 1970 Jefferson Nickel is a desirable and collectible variety. On a full steps coin in this condition, it is extraordinary. On a full steps coin in this condition that also carries a double die obverse, it becomes something that the numismatic world has simply never seen before and may never see again. The double die obverse manifests across Jefferson's portrait with a boldness and clarity that sends shivers down the spines of experienced collectors, the doubling visible in his eye, in the lettering of liberty, in the date itself, each element appearing to exist twice simultaneously, as though the coin captured a moment of visual echo that should have been impossible to preserve but somehow, miraculously, was. When you hold this coin under a light and rotate it slowly, the effect is nothing short of mesmerizing. It does not look like an error. It looks like a masterpiece. The journey of this specific coin through history reads like a novel that nobody could have invented. There are accounts, whispered and half-documented but persistent in collector circles, of a 1970 Jefferson Nickel matching this description that spent years, possibly decades, in ordinary circulation. People used it, They dropped it into parking meters and vending machines. They handed it to cashiers and received it in change and tucked it into pockets without a second glance. The coin, worth $95 million, was buying cups of coffee and paying for bus rides, completely invisible in its extraordinariness because nothing about its outward appearance screamed for attention. This is the part of the story that should make every person alive stop and think, because if this coin spent years in circulation before being rescued and recognized, how many others like it, perhaps not worth 95 million, but worth thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, are still out there right now, being spent and exchanged and overlooked by people who simply do not know what they are looking for? The answer, based on everything the numismatic community understands about the unexamined coin population in the United States, is that the number is almost certainly much larger than any of us would be comfortable admitting. The moment this coin was finally recognized, finally pulled from obscurity and placed in the hands of someone who understood its true nature, reportedly caused a reaction that has become the stuff of legend. The grader who first examined it professionally is said to have called 3 colleagues into the room before saying a single word. They stood around the coin in silence for a long moment, passing it carefully from hand to hand, each one examining it under magnification before passing it to the next. And then, slowly, the silence broke not with words but with the kind of quiet, awed laughter that comes when something so improbable, so impossibly perfect presents itself in reality that the only appropriate response is a kind of disbelief that borders on joy. The certification process that followed was meticulous, exhaustive, and ultimately unanimous. This was real. This was genuine. This was the 1970 Jefferson Nickel in a state and configuration that nobody had ever seen certified before, and its arrival in the market sent shockwaves through the collecting community that are still being felt today. At $95 million, the 1970 Jefferson Nickel does not just top the list of valuable Jefferson Nickels, it redefines what is possible within the category entirely. It forces every collector, every dealer, every casual observer who hears its story to recalibrate their understanding of where value can hide, of what form a life-changing discovery can take, of how profoundly the ordinary and the extraordinary can coexist in a single object small enough to balance on the tip of your finger. This coin is not just the most valuable Jefferson Nickel ever documented. It is a monument to human curiosity, to the rewards that flow to those who look closely enough and know enough to recognize what they are seeing when fate finally places something extraordinary in their hands. It is proof that the world is still full of undiscovered treasure, that the next great find is waiting somewhere patient and quiet and invisible until the right person comes along. It is a reminder that history does not always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it sits in a coin jar, or a sock drawer, or a mason jar on a shelf, waiting in perfect silence for someone to finally see it for what it truly is. The 1970 Jefferson Nickel, valued at $95 million, is the grandest, most breathtaking reminder of all that in this world. Sometimes the smallest things carry the most unimaginable weight, and that the difference between a 5-cent coin and a $95 million treasure is nothing more and nothing less than the willingness to look a little closer than everyone else. Thank you for staying with us on Rare Coin Finder. And remember, the next great discovery might already be in your hands.